What is up, everybody? This is JP, your online personal trainer, and today I'm here to talk to you about steroids and do they discredit you as a lifter. Again, this is number 5 in my personal trainer vlog series. These videos are aimed at personal trainers, any leaders in the fitness industry. I mean, you could be a group fitness instructor, anything that's going to be a leader in the fitness industry or health industry, I guess. If you were just a lifter and you're watching these videos, or you aren't a personal trainer and you plan to be one, then these still apply to you. And even if you don't plan to be a personal trainer or some type of leader in the fitness industry, and you just want more knowledge from the side of a personal trainer, these videos can be interesting for you too. Again, like I said, this video in particular is do steroids discredit somebody as a lifter? Meaning, if someone takes steroids, does it discredit them? I'm just going to give you the short answer, and then I'm going to go into detail. The short answer for me is no, it does not. If someone takes steroids, it doesn't automatically mean that they aren't a good lifter, that they're a cheat. It doesn't mean that they don't know what they're talking about. It doesn't mean that if they were natural, they would be weak or not big. That's what a lot of people tend to think, but I'll go into a little bit more detail on that. If you watching this video, if you ever roam, I guess you could say social media platforms in any type of way, Facebook being one, YouTube being a big one too, YouTube probably being the biggest for fitness people, you're going to see a lot of people in the comments of someone doing something, whether it be a bodybuilder or just a fitness icon, a big name in the fitness industry. They may be doing some good feat. For example, they may be really aesthetic, or they may be extremely strong, or they may have a really good high vertical jump or something. Something that's extremely out of the ordinary. It's very good. Something that obviously makes you think, okay, are they on something? And you'll see someone in the comments, a YouTube comments, it could be a Facebook video, oh, it's because they're on gear. Oh, how come you don't tell us? I mean, I'll be a little bit blunt, but they'll be rude, and they'll say things like, again, you'll know if you watch YouTube, read YouTube comments, they'll say things like, oh, you'll show us this, but you won't show us putting the needles in your ass. They'll say things trying to be funny, but they'll say things like that, because they're basically saying they discredit them because they're doing steroids, which again, I disagree. It does, regardless if you take steroids or not, it does take a lot of hard work to achieve something. Now, to gain muscle mass, to become fast, to be strong, or whatever. And depending on what you're doing too, again, it can really not discredit you at all. There are certain things that you can do, obviously, on steroids that make it easy. For example, gaining muscle mass is relatively easy on steroids. You could have a shitty lifting program and be taking steroids or some type of performance-enhancing drugs and gain muscle mass. It's that simple. You're just basically, you don't really need to be a good trainer, or you don't have to have a good training program to gain muscle when you're taking steroids. But again, that's just for a regular lifter. If someone who has a half-ass program and takes steroids are going to gain muscle mass. But let's take this to a different aspect. What about professional bodybuilding? Now, professional bodybuilding, all of them are on gear. No one really cares. It's their personal choice. Obviously, me being a personal trainer, and if I had a client, I wouldn't want them on gear. But I mean, someone's going to do what they want to do. Oh, and for people who don't know, when I mean on gear, I mean on steroids or on anabolic hormones or on performance-enhancing drugs, whatever word you want to use. But yeah, so bodybuilders, they're on gear. They're going to do what they want to do. But at that level, those guys are all on gear, so they're all competing against someone else on something. So that's almost kind of like part of their game against the other person is, I guess, what combinations and when, where, how much to take of performance-enhancing drugs or gear. I guess it's not so much performance because, I mean, kind of not, but I'll just start saying gear. But how much gear to take. So that's kind of like, that's part of being a good bodybuilder, I guess. It's not just the training, it's not just the nutrition, it's also the gear, what you take when and how much. So in that sense, of course they're all going to gain muscle, but it's a lot more than that, especially with bodybuilding. You can't just take gear. Those guys, again, they're at the top. Those are some of the best genetics you're going to have in general, along with the best training programs, along with the best nutrition, along with the best everything. Because again, thousands and thousands and thousands upon thousands of guys and women try to be bodybuilders, and not all of them get to the, like, for example, they don't get to the Mr. Olympia stage. They don't make it to the Arnold Classic. They don't make it to the New York Pro. So because of that, obviously there's a big separation between it's not just taking gear, oh, and then you're going to end up on the New York Pro stage. You have to have genetics. You have to be taking right. You have to know your gear really well. You have to be taking the right amounts. You have to be your nutrition has to be on point. Your exercise plan has to be on point too. I mean, you got to be pretty good on everything. But when it comes to a regular lifter, you could just take steroids and blow up. You could just take steroids and be big. So my point is that, like, you can take steroids. There are certain things that are easy on steroids. Like I said, for a regular lifter, you don't need to be Mr. Olympia or you don't need to be Mr. Olympia or someone on a professional bodybuilding stage for someone else to say, "Oh man, you're jacked." There are plenty of people that I know that have a lot of muscle on them that are pretty ripped. They'd be like, "Oh, that guy works out." So basically, it's easy to get a lot of muscle mass, and it's easy for you to, I guess, get credit for something that's not necessarily hard, which. So I guess in little certain circumstances, I wouldn't say I discredit someone, but I wouldn't give them as much credit. Again, and that comes down to gaining muscle. You could have a shitty program and still gain muscle mass. If you don't believe me, then you don't know anything about steroids. Go look up any amount of research. You can find any amount of research on steroids, anabolic hormones. Why do, like, think of it like this. Two different people haven't you ever met two different people that they both don't work out, but one just tends to have more muscle mass? And let's just say they're both guys, both same height, but one tends to have more muscle mass and the other one tends to be kind of pudgy. But I've met people who don't work out at all that I know for a fact, because this was like in middle school or high school, but I know for a fact that they weren't in sports. I knew them personally. I hung out with them. They didn't take any type of gear. They didn't work out, but they were pretty strong. They had a lot of muscle on them for just not, like, people in high school, like, we'd arm wrestle or something like that. Or we'd, like, see who could do the most push-ups, just how guys act. They compete against each other. And I met people who are extremely strong, and they like I said, they're not on anything. So that's a big difference in genetics. Hormones play a big role in how much muscle mass you carry, like, at a baseline without doing anything. So even taking steroids and anabolic hormones for nothing, you'll gain more muscle mass normally. So, and now compound that fact with the fact that you're on some type of training program, even if it's a shitty one, you're going to gain muscle mass. So I guess when it comes to gaining muscle mass, I don't give someone as much credit depending on where they're at when it comes to building muscle, because honestly, it's easy to build muscle when you're on gear. Now, it depends on what level too. Like I said, that's just for a normal lifter. Now, if you're in the bodybuilding stage and you do really well, it's a lot more than just taking gear. So that's why I give you more credit. And a big one too, where, again, like I said, my ultimate answer about discrediting someone based off steroids is no, because there's a lot of things that people can do. Like, even if you're on steroids, like I said, professional bodybuilding, if you make it that far, steroids they matter obviously, but that's not what's going to win you. It's everything combined. But also knowledge. Look at knowledge. People think that just because someone's on steroids, they don't know what they're talking about. That's a big thing in YouTube. Like, oh, he's on steroids, that's the only reason why he's this strong. Or, oh, he's on steroids, that's the only reason why he attains this much muscle mass. Yes, it's easy to attain muscle when you're taking steroids, but it's not easy to attain elite levels of body composition on steroids. You're not going to take steroids and get shredded like I said, someone who's on a professional bodybuilding stage. It doesn't happen like that. You will gain muscle, but you're not going to become shredded. I've seen people talk shit, like I said, on very good bodybuilders because they're just simply good just because they take steroids. Again, it's easy to get muscle, but it's hard to get down to elite levels of body composition. By that I mean low levels of body fat, extreme amounts of muscle mass, great proportions, obviously good being able to pose really well, things like that. And also too is just straight knowledge. Just because someone takes steroids doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about. You could have two different people, both of them have degrees, both of them have trained people for a while, both of them have to have a ton of experience. They both have trained naturally, but this person has now started taking gear for a few years, and this person hasn't and stayed natural. Then I'll know people who will talk shit on this person who takes gear. At that point, it doesn't matter. Why does it matter? It's their personal choice. Again, I don't wish anyone to take gear, really, because it's going to hurt them. I don't want people to start taking things that's going to affect their health negatively. But hey, if they want to, that's on them. I would never do it. Obviously, I'm not nearly as strong or as big as anyone who takes gear. But that's where a lot of this point ties into, is because it goes both ways. Just because someone takes steroids doesn't mean they're stupid. It doesn't mean that they don't work hard. It doesn't mean that and yes, some things come easier when you're taking steroids, but at that same time, there's still ways to push yourself and to put you in the realm of the elite. But no, I wouldn't. In those senses, I wouldn't discredit someone who's taking steroids, because again, it doesn't mean that they don't know what they're talking about. A few examples are or just one example is Ben Pakulski. Ben Pakulski, he's a IFBB Pro bodybuilder, and he's been to the Mr. Olympia stage, and his knowledge of biomechanics is extremely knowledgeable. He's extremely knowledgeable when it comes to biomechanics. I mean, if you just listen to him talk, I know he's done a lot of seminars. He knows a lot. I know he has the degree in kinesiology, and he's really applied that. He's really applied the scientific principle to lifting. So regardless if he was skinny, or regardless if he was big, regardless if he took gear, or regardless if he didn't, his knowledge still stands when he talks about biomechanics when it comes to the science of lifting. But that's what I'm saying, though. It's not necessarily this or that. Or, like I said, someone like me. I mean, I trust myself in something that I say. I don't know everything, but obviously I'm natural, and I don't have a ton of muscle mass. I'm not the strongest by far. I'm not even fairly strong for someone, just a ton of lifters out there. Strength has been something that I'm not genetically gifted with strength. I've had to work really hard for the numbers that I can lift. But I work out 6 times a week. I watch what I eat. So just because I'm not stronger than you, or I don't have as much muscle mass on you, doesn't mean that I don't know more than you. It doesn't mean that I can't train someone more properly than you. Now again, I'm still. If you can't say those things if you don't work out, if you don't practice what you preach, you have no right to talk. I practice what I preach all the time, is what I'm saying. It's just some people take gear, some people are genetically gifted, and then some people just don't have either. They're not genetically gifted, nor do they take gear. But again, none of those will determine whether or not you know what you're talking about, whether you put in hard work, and whether or not, like I said, you can teach someone if you're a personal trainer, or whether you're good at what you do. Now, there's other realms where, again, steroids, which is not in this topic, which will just touch on lightly, like steroids and performance-enhancing drugs in sports, where it's cheating. That's, again, I'm against that, because that's cheating. I'm just talking about for general lifters. So just don't automatically discredit someone because they know what they're talking about. Now, I know a ton of people, obviously, in the fitness industry that basically are well-known steroid users, or people on gear, that it's almost like the opposite effect. They think they know what they're talking about because they are on gear, because they have a ton of muscle mass, when for the most part they have an okay work ethic, an okay training plan, and then take a bunch of gear, and then they're huge, and everything else they do is shit. It's garbage. I mean, you could probably name a handful of them. Think of any of your big fitness YouTubers that are like that. They're not very knowledgeable. They just lift some kind of heavy weight. They go for the pump every single time, and they don't really, like I said, they don't talk about any scientific principles. And even if you don't, that's cool, that's fine. But they pretend to know everything about lifting, when a lot of the stuff they say is incorrect. And just because they're big, they always talk about how big they are, how big the muscles they have. But what does that mean? What does that mean for a natural lifter? Natural lifters aren't going to get big with what you're saying. The only way someone's going to get big listening to your advice is if they take steroids, which again, that's kind of the opposite end of it. So that'd be someone who's taking steroids or is on gear, who should be discredited because they don't know what they're talking about. So ultimately, this video comes down to is, don't judge someone based off of what they're taking. Yes, it is easier to do certain things on steroids, but at that same time, there are still hard things to do. Like, for example, it's easier to gain muscle on steroids, but it's not easy to get to like professional bodybuilding stage levels of readiness, even taking steroids. And again, gaining knowledge, training somebody on the elite levels of strength, or the strength competitions. Almost all those guys are on gear. So if one beats another guy, you just know they're both on gear, so he must have just worked harder, or maybe he had a better plan, or whatever it is. I'm not saying go ahead and do those. There are a lot of negative health consequences to taking steroids, but again, just don't judge a book based on its cover. If you like these videos, please like, share, and subscribe. If you have any recommendations for videos you guys want to see next time, please post them down below. Again, if you haven't already, check out all my social media. I post them down below. I have an Instagram, a Twitter, a Facebook, and you already know a YouTube. But until next time, see you.